Preface: The Witness and the Forged. This is not a book of answers, but of reflections. What follows is an allegory, a story that begins with one man's grief and opens outward into the hidden machinery of sorrow, choice, and awakening. Though Jonah's path is his own, it is also ours, a mirror of how we cling, how we break, and how we may yet learn to release. The watcher in these pages does not rescue, nor condemn. It only witnesses. The same is true of life itself. We are each seen, but the question remains, can we learn to see ourselves? If you have carried wounds that felt too heavy, if you have longed for release, or if you have simply wondered what meaning can be drawn from suffering, then perhaps this story will find a home in you. May it be read not as doctrine, but as invitation. Not as an ending, but as a way opened. Chapter 1: The Weight of Silence.
I never thought my story would end this way. Not on the highway, not behind the wheel, not with my chest hollow and my eyes burning from tears I couldn't stop. If you'd asked me 10 years ago, I'd have told you my life was steady, ordinary. A wife I had known since we were children. A boy with my eyes and her smile. A home built on promises that seemed carved into stone. I never envied other men when their marriages broke and healed and broke again. Pitied them. Not because I was better, but because I thought I was safe. That's the cruelest part, I think. When I look back, I believed in permanence. It didn't happen all at once. Nothing ever does. It started with her sighs. Small ones at first, sharp exhalations when the boy was asleep and the house was too quiet. First, I ignored them. Then she began to talk about time. She said she was ready for more, that other women she knew were moving forward, in work, in travel, in freedom. I tried to listen. I tried to offer more of myself. But our lives had folded into the rhythm of raising our son. The romance that once flared when we were teenagers had settled into something quieter. Family dinners, bills, school runs, nights where exhaustion overtook intimacy. I thought this was what marriage was supposed to be. A long arc of care, the kind of steady presence that built trust across decades. She wanted more. And when I couldn't become more than what I already was, she began to drift. At first, I thought it was harmless. An old friend she'd met for coffee, someone she'd known nearly as long as I had. He smiled too broadly when he shook my hand, but I brushed it off. I had no suspicion. It was only later, after her words sharpened into distance and our fights became cold silences, that I understood. My best friend had taken her hand in secret. He had courted her beneath my roof. And when the moment was right, she left. The divorce was swift, merciless. She had the system on her side. Lawyers, judges, smiles that turned to ice in the courtroom. I was left with scraps. A man reduced to monthly deposits, told to be grateful for visitation rights that rarely arrived. Our boy became a stranger. His voice changed on the phone. Words he once said with warmth now carried someone else's echo. He spoke of his mother's new husband, Dad. He called him once, and when I corrected him, he went silent. Later, I learned the stories. The lies painted about me, whispered in his ear until he believed them. I was not the father who tucked him in, who carried him on his shoulders, who taught him how to ride a bike. I was a shadow, a ghost in my own son's eyes, and yet I loved him. God, I loved him. The night it happened was not meant to be an ending. It was meant to be another drive home, another night of solitude. The loneliness had grown heavier each day, pressing on my ribs, squeezing the breath out of me. I thought of my son constantly, of how he looked when he was 5, when he was 10, of how he would never truly know me now. Grief is a tide, comes in waves, and sometimes it drowns you before you realize you've stepped too deep. I was driving too fast, tears smearing the road ahead. When I whispered words, I didn't even mean to say, I can't do this anymore. The car swerved. The lights spun. And then nothing. I expected release. I expected an end to the sorrow. A silence deep enough to numb the ache. Instead, I woke into something worse. A gray expanse, sterile and endless. Light without warmth, brightness without shadows. I thought it was hell. Not fire, not torment, but emptiness. I walked, but my footsteps made no sound. I screamed, but the echoes died before reaching me. And all the while, images pressed against me like glass walls. My wife in her new home, her hand in his. My son, taller now, his laughter bent toward another man. I pounded against the walls until my fists bled, but the blood vanished before it could fall. I was trapped, not in flame, not in chains, but in silence. Anger came first. She betrayed me. He betrayed me. The system betrayed me. I burned with it, paced the gray halls with fury as my only companion. I cursed her name, cursed his smile, cursed the laws that stripped me of my son. But anger has an edge, and mine dulled quickly. What remained was sorrow, raw, endless sorrow that hollowed me from within. I thought death had freed me from it. Instead, death magnified it until it was all I was. I asked questions then. Why am I still here? Why can I still see? Why can I still feel? No one answered. And then, in the distance, I saw movement. A figure. Faint. Indistinct. Neither man nor woman. Neither friend nor enemy. It didn't speak. It only stood, watching. I called out, desperate. Tell me, is this hell? Is this punishment? The figure said nothing. The silence was more terrifying than fire would have been. That was when I realized. Maybe this place wasn't hell. Maybe it was something worse, a system designed not to punish but to hold, to trap me in my own wound, to feed on the parts of me that refused to let go. I sank to my knees. I thought of my boy, of his eyes when he was small, when he looked at me without shame or confusion. I thought of how I had loved him with everything I had. And now, I saw him grow under another man's shadow, his laughter stolen, his truth rewritten. Was this my torment? To watch but never touch, to know but never change. I whispered his name until my throat broke, until my voice was nothing but a rasp. The figure remained, silent, patient, as if waiting for me to see something I was not yet ready to see. I don't know how long I stayed there, hours, days, years. Time doesn't pass in this place. Only sorrow passes, moving like currents beneath the skin. I had thought death was the end of sorrow. I had thought betrayal was the deepest wound. But here I began to learn. Sorrow can stretch beyond death, and betrayal can become a prison. And I, Jonah, was still inside it.
Chapter 2, The First Vision, Betrayal Unveiled.
The silence was unbearable. It pressed in from every side, heavy and sterile, until it felt like a second skin I could never shed. I thought I had screamed all my grief away, but the soundless air made even my rage dissolve like breath on glass. When the figure returned, I almost welcomed it. The watcher, if that's what it was, stood in the same posture as before, faceless and patient. Not accusing, not welcoming, just observing. You, I rasped. If you can see me, then answer me. Why am I here? It didn't move, only tilted its head slightly, like a parent listening to a child's tantrum. Then its hand lifted, slow, deliberate, and the gray expanse around me rippled as though the world itself were water disturbed by a stone. First, I thought it was memory. The shapes around me sharpened into familiar lines. A kitchen table, the yellow light of a lamp, the soft clatter of dishes. There was her voice. My wife's laughter, bright as it used to be. For a moment, I ached with relief. But the vision didn't stay gentle. I saw myself enter the room, weary from work but smiling. She looked up, but the light in her eyes was dimmer than I remembered. My friend, his face, was already seated at the table, too comfortable in a chair that had always been mine. I staggered back. No, not this. The scene blurred, shifted. Now it was the driveway, a summer evening. My wife leaning against the car, arms folded, my best friend's shadow stretching over her. I remembered this night, or thought I did. I had been there, oblivious. I told myself the tension was just a trick of light, nothing more. But here, in this sterile realm, the shadows twisted unnaturally. His hand on her arm was too slow, too deliberate. His smile stretching wider than any man's should. And behind them, in the air itself, I saw something else. Strands of pale light, sterile and mechanical, weaving like threads around their bodies. A force, feeding, amplifying. My stomach turned. It wasn't just them, was it? The watcher gave no reply. I wanted to close my eyes, but the vision forced itself into me. I saw my wife's mouth moving, her words low and sharp, though I couldn't make them out. My friend leaned close, whispers dancing into her ear. Each phrase seemed to harden her expression, sculpting her into someone I didn't recognize. And then, the cruelest part. I saw myself again, entering the room days later, smiling at both of them as though nothing were wrong. The vision made me look pathetic. Too trusting, too blind, a fool dressed as a husband. That's not how it happened, I shouted. I wasn't that blind. But the echo of my friend rose from the chair, and his face twisted into something half shadow, half human. His voice was my memory, but sharpened, poisoned. You were always blind, Jonah. You lived in illusions. You thought love was permanent, that friendship was loyal. You were a child playing house. I lunged at him, fists clenched. My hand passed through his chest like smoke. He didn't flinch. He only smiled wider. The watcher's silence was worse than the mockery. It let me rage, let me curse, let me collapse. Only when I knelt, trembling, did the vision shift again. Now I saw myself in the courtroom. Her lawyer's voice rang like steel, slicing my life apart into financial obligations and custody schedules. My wife's face was cold, her eyes fixed ahead as though I were a stranger on the street. My best friend sat a row behind, his hand resting on her shoulder like a brand. And there I was, not proud, not strong, but hollow. The vision exaggerated it, made me smaller, weaker, almost translucent. No, I whispered. That wasn't me. That wasn't all of me. The echo of my friend leaned close again. This is what you are, Jonah. Betrayal defines you. You are the wound, nothing more. I shook my head. The sterile light trembled, and for the first time I saw it differently. It wasn't neutral. It wasn't heaven or hell. It was a machine, cold, precise, designed to keep me staring at this wound until I dissolved into it. Why show me this? I demanded, turning toward the watcher. Is this your justice? To trap me in their lies? The watcher didn't answer, but its silence seemed to hold a question, unspoken. Whose prison is this really? Theirs or yours? The thought cut deeper than any vision. My rage broke like glass. I sank to the ground, my chest heaving though no air filled my lungs. I realized I didn't know anymore where my memory ended, and the system's distortions began. Was I betrayed as cruelly as I remembered? Or had the inhibitor twisted it, feeding the wound until it consumed me? Either way, I was trapped. Not by them, not by death, by me. I pressed my palms to the floor. If this isn't hell, then what is it? What are you showing me? The watcher tilted its head again, and then, as if satisfied, the vision dissolved. The kitchen, the driveway, the courtroom, all gone, falling back into the sterile void. Only the echo of my betrayer's smile lingered for a heartbeat longer, then faded like smoke in sunlight. I was alone again, alone but not the same. For the first time, I suspected that my sorrow was not punishment from beyond, but a system, one I had to learn to see, to name, before I could ever hope to leave it. And somewhere deep inside me, a thought stirred, unbidden. Perhaps the watcher isn't here to judge. Perhaps it's here to witness whether I will see the truth.
Chapter 3: The Chain of Attachment.
The watcher came again. This time, it did not linger in silence. It lifted one arm, and with that simple motion the sterile void began to bend. The flat gray shimmered as though a veil had been drawn back, and behind it, against my will, I saw my son. "No!" I whispered. "Not him. Don't show me him." But the vision was merciless. He was older now, taller, his face stretched into early manhood. He laughed. A sound that once filled my chest with pride, but it was bent toward someone else. Another man's hand clapped his shoulder. Another man's voice guided his steps. The word Dad slipped from his lips, and it was not mine. I pressed forward, as though my body could break through the screen of light. "I'm here," I shouted. "I never left you. Don't you see me?" But my son's eyes never turned. My words fell into silence. The scene shifted. A dinner table, warm light, the clatter of dishes. My wife sat across from him, her new husband at her side. They spoke in easy tones, laughing at stories I didn't know. And then, like a knife twisting, I heard her voice sharpen. "Your father was weak," she told him. "He couldn't handle life's weight. He abandoned us." "No!" I slammed my fists into the floor. "That's not true. You know me better than that." But my son nodded, his young eyes clouded with belief. His stepfather leaned in, voice steady, calm, poisonous. "I'll always be here, son. I'll give you the strength he couldn't." My chest tore open. "I was there," I screamed. "I carried you when you were sick. I taught you to ride. I never betrayed you." The boy's face wavered in the sterile light, as if hearing some distant echo. But then the vision hardened. The truth I knew was drowned beneath the story they had woven. And then I saw it. The threads. Just as in the betrayal vision, sterile light wrapped around them, thin strands, weaving like wires through their words, their gestures, their lies. This force acting as machinery feeding, amplifying, sealing the falsehood until it became the only truth my son could carry. It wasn't just betrayal this time. It was erasure. My knees gave out beneath me. I pressed my hands to the floor, shaking. "Please," I whispered, "don't take him from me. Don't let them turn him against me. Let me keep him, if only in death." The watcher said nothing, but a new shadow stirred in the vision. First, I thought it was my son, but as it stepped closer, I saw it was something else. An echo, twisted, half-formed. His face flickered between innocence and scorn. "Is this love, Jonah?" the shadow asked, its voice both childlike and cruel. "To cling so hard that you strangle us both? To chain yourself and me so neither can be free?" I shook my head violently. "No. I stayed because I loved him. I stayed because I couldn't let him go." The shadow smiled faintly. "Then you did not love. You possessed." The words struck like iron. I wanted to deny them, but deep in my gut, I knew there was truth buried there. How many times had I said, "He's mine"? How many times had I cursed my wife and her new husband not because they lied, but because they took what I believed was mine? My love had bent, hardened into something sharp. What began as devotion had turned into possession, and I hadn't seen it until now. I wept then, openly, my body heaving though no breath filled it. Was I wrong to love him? I cried. Was I wrong to hold on? The shadow tilted its head, eerily like the watcher itself. You were never wrong to love, but you were wrong to believe love meant ownership. Love is not a chain, Jonah. It is a river. When you dammed it, you trapped yourself. And me. Its form wavered, dissolving back into the sterile light. I turned to the watcher, broken. If I let go, I'll lose him forever. He'll forget me completely. For the first time, the watcher moved closer. Its outline overlapped mine, casting a faint shadow across my chest. It did not speak, but its silence had weight, as though the answer was not for it to give, but for me to discover. Was it possible that letting go was not the end? That release could be another form of love? Not the clinging, not the chains, but something deeper, something freer? The vision began to dissolve. The dinner table, the laughter, the poison whispers all faded into gray. Only my son's face lingered a moment longer, eyes clouded but still carrying the spark I had always loved. And then he was gone. I was left kneeling in the sterile void. My heart was torn, my chest hollow, but somewhere inside me a thought flickered, fragile, almost unformed. Maybe true love is not clinging at all. Maybe it is honoring. The watcher stood over me, silent, patient, and I realized these visions were not punishments. They were revelations, and until I saw them fully, I would never be free.
Chapter 4: The Key of Release.
I had nothing left to give. The visions had gutted me, first betrayal, then attachment. My anger had burned to ash, my grief drained until only silence remained. I lay on the sterile floor of the void, staring at nothing, and for the first time since my death, I wondered if I had ceased to exist at all. But then I moved my hand, and saw that I was still here. My fingers trembled, my chest heaved with breaths that carried no air, but I remained. Not gone, not finished, and that was when the watcher stepped forward. Until now it had kept its distance, hovering like a sentinel. Now it came close enough that I could feel its presence wash over me. No face, no voice, just silence and patience, standing inches away. I wanted to spit curses at it. I wanted to beg for answers, but the words died in my throat. Instead, I whispered, "Why? Why show me all this? What do you want from me?" The watcher did not move. Yet in its stillness, the gray around me rippled, a shimmer like glass catching sunlight. And then I saw it, a flicker of darkness at my feet, a shadow, mine. I froze. The sterile light had never allowed shadows before. I had walked, crawled, screamed in this void, and not once had my form been reflected anywhere. But now, faint and wavering, my outline stretched beneath me. It was imperfect, broken, fragmented, flickering in and out. But it was real. My chest tightened. "What does this mean?" I asked. The watcher tilted its head, and for the first time, I felt its silence as a kind of answer. "You are beginning to see yourself." The shimmer around me grew. A mirror formed in the air. Not glass, not metal, but something more primal, reflective like still water. And in it I saw myself. Not the man who had once held his son on his shoulders. Not the husband who had believed in permanence. Not the hollow ghost the in whom I came to call the inhibitor showed me in the courtroom vision. I saw all of them together. A tangle of wounds and strength, love and rage, shadow and light. And for the first time I understood. I was more than my wounds. The mirror self spoke. Its lips moved in time with mine, but the voice was stronger, steadier. "You honored betrayal more than truth. You honored attachment more than love. But will you honor your soul? Tears blurred my vision. If I let go, I lose everything. My wife, my son, my life, all gone. What remains? The reflection's eyes burned into mine. You remain. The words struck like thunder. I realized how much I had made my wounds my identity. I was the betrayed. I was the abandoned father. I was the ghost clinging to what was lost. I had made myself the prison. But beneath all that, I was still Jonah. Still a soul. Still a being who could choose. And in that realization, something shifted. I fell to my knees. My hands pressed against the shadow beneath me, and this time it did not flicker. It stretched fully, clearly, black against the sterile floor. Solid. My own. The sterile light trembled. Cracks spread across the void like fractures in glass. For the first time, the place I thought eternal began to waver. The inhibitor had no hold on me anymore. The watcher finally spoke. His voice was not loud. It was not commanding. It was a whisper, soft as breath. Yet it carried through the void with weight that made my bones shiver. Do you see now? I closed my eyes. Yes, the chains were never theirs. Not my wife. Not my son. Not even death. The chains were mine, and I will not honor them anymore. I lifted my head. My voice was steady. I will honor my soul. The void shattered. Light and shadow poured in together, no longer sterile, no longer flat. Depth returned. I felt space, distance, movement. The emptiness dissolved into a corridor that stretched further than sight, filled with faint figures flickering like distant stars. Other souls. I staggered to my feet. For the first time since my death, I was not bound to my grief. For the first time, I felt the air stir against me. Not air as I once knew it, but the current of something living, moving. The watcher stepped back, its form dimming. It did not vanish, but I sensed its role had changed. It was no longer there to strip me bare. Now it was there to see if I could walk forward. I looked down at my shadow, steady beneath me. I thought of my wife, my son, my betrayals. They were still part of me, but no longer my prison. I whispered, I am more than these. And with that, I stepped into the corridor, where other souls stirred in their own silences, waiting for their own shadows to awaken.
Chapter 5: The Corridor of Souls.
The void cracked open. At first, I thought it was only my shadow, stretching clear and steady beneath me, that had shaken the sterile silence. But then the floor itself groaned, fissures of light racing outward in every direction. The world around me, once flat and endless, shuddered like brittle glass. And then it broke. The sterile gray dissolved, not into nothingness, but into distance. A corridor vast and endless, its walls made of light and shadow braided together. The air pulsed faintly, alive with a rhythm I could not name. For the first time since my death, I was not alone. Shapes moved along the corridor. Faint silhouettes, some barely more than smudges of smoke, others flickering like candles in the wind. They lined the path on either side, unmoving, trapped in loops of gesture or expression. Hands clasped around invisible chains, mouths frozen mid-cry, faces tilted toward unseen lovers or enemies. I took a step forward. The sound of my movement echoed now, thin, uncertain, but real. The echo brushed against the nearest silhouette, and it trembled, as though stirred from sleep. But it did not turn to me. Its head remained bowed, its arms locked around a shape I could not see. A man clinging to a child who wasn't there. I stopped, heart pounding. I moved further down the corridor. More figures emerged in the dim light. A woman kneeling, her hands bloody though no wound marked her. An old man, bent double beneath the weight of a ledger he clutched to his chest. A youth with his fists raised, forever locked in a fight with an opponent who wasn't present. Their faces were hollow, yet etched with desperate devotion. Grief, greed, rage, each locked into its own cycle, each soul bound to the shape of its wound. And I realized with a chill, they were no different from me. I stopped before a woman who sat cross-legged on the ground. Her lips moved constantly, whispering into the air. At first, I thought she prayed, but as I listened, I realized she was speaking to someone. A lover, perhaps, begging them to stay, pleading forgiveness, bargaining promises she could never fulfill. Her hands gripped the air as though it were flesh, but there was nothing, just shadow. I knelt before her. "Can you hear me?" I asked, voice low, careful. She didn't look up. Her whisper never broke. I reached out, foolishly I know now, and placed my hand against hers. For a heartbeat, warmth flickered. My fingers brushed against the outline of her knuckles, and her head jerked, her eyes suddenly locking onto mine. For a moment, I thought I had reached her, but then her gaze passed through me. She returned to her whispering, her hands clutching at absence. I pulled back, shaken. The watcher's voice, soft as ever, echoed behind me, or perhaps inside me. "They are not deaf, Jonah. They are bound." Bound by what? My throat tightened. By chains? By lies? By themselves? I stood slowly, staring at the woman. Her cycle was endless, her prison self-made. And all at once, I saw my own reflection in her. Me, whispering my son's name, clinging to memories until they choked me. This corridor was not hell. It was a gallery of mirrors, each soul trapped by the shape of its own wound. I moved on, fear and awe curling together in my chest. Further along, I saw pairs of souls, even groups, bound together in loops of conflict. A husband and wife locked forever in an argument, their mouths open in silent accusation. Brothers wrestling, neither able to pin the other, their struggle eternal. A circle of men, each pointing fingers at the next, no one listening, no one free. The inhibitor's design pulsed through it all. I could see the threads of sterile light woven between them, amplifying their obsessions, ensuring the cycle never broke. The system didn't need whips or fire. It only needed to keep their shadows hidden, their agency unseen. They were prisoners not of bars, but of fixation. I stopped again, my chest aching. "This is all of us," I whispered. "This is every wound, every betrayal, every hunger. We chain ourselves, and the inhibitor feeds on the weight." The watcher stood nearby, silent once more. But I felt its presence affirm what I said. A shape stirred at the edge of the corridor, smaller than the rest. A child. He sat with his knees to his chest, rocking slowly. His face was obscured, but I felt the pull instantly. My breath caught. My son. I stumbled forward, my hands out. But as I drew near, I saw it was not him. It was a boy, yes, but not mine. A fragment of someone else's love, someone else's wound. He lifted his head, and for a moment his eyes met mine, wide and hollow. And then he looked past me. His arms reached for another silhouette farther down the hall. A woman crouched in grief, her hands open. The boy rose and ran to her. She clutched him, sobbing soundlessly, her form flickering with the strain of her attachment. And just like that, he was absorbed into her cycle, vanishing into her shadow. I froze. My legs shook. How many times had I nearly done the same? Reached into the void, clung to a shadow, mistaking it for my son. How many times had I been one step from vanishing into my own loop forever? I turned back to the watcher, horror pressing in. They can't all be saved, can they? The silence was heavy, and I understood. Salvation could not be given. It had to be chosen. I walked further down the corridor. Silhouette after silhouette passed me. Grief, rage, greed, envy, all carved into endless loops. Each one was me. Each one was humanity. And with every step, the truth grew clearer. My personal sorrow had been no different. My story was not special. My pain was not unique. The inhibitor fed on us all. I stopped, trembling, my voice barely more than breath. This is the pattern. My betrayal, my attachment, their hunger, their grief, all the same, all of us chained by ourselves. The watcher finally moved, raising its hand once more. The corridor pulsed, the silhouettes trembling as though stirred by unseen wind. And then its voice whispered inside me, "Now you see the others. But do you see yourself among them?" I closed my eyes. Yes, I saw.
Chapter 6: The Mirror of Despair.
I thought I had seen enough. The corridor had shown me hunger, rage, betrayal, grief. Each soul trapped in its own reflection, each one bound by the shape of its wound. I thought nothing could cut deeper than seeing my own sorrow mirrored in the thousands around me. But then I heard her, a sound, faint at first, but distinct in the endless hush. Not words, not even breath. A sob, raw and endless, like a wound that never closed. I followed it down the corridor. The silhouettes blurred past me, their cycles unbroken, until the sound grew clearer. There, hunched in the light, was a woman. She knelt on the ground, her arms wrapped around something invisible. At first, I thought it was a bundle, a swaddled child, but when I drew closer, I saw only emptiness in her arms. Still, she rocked it gently, whispering lullabies that broke into sobs. "My child," she gasped. "Don't leave me. Don't go." And though there was nothing in her embrace, her body trembled as if clutching the weight of flesh and bone. I sank to my knees before her. "Can you see me?" I asked softly. Her eyes flicked up, wide and bloodshot, then dropped back to the empty bundle. "Quiet," she hissed, her voice cracking. "You'll wake him." I swallowed hard. "There's nothing there." Her head snapped up, fury blazing. "Don't you dare say that." Her arms tightened around the emptiness, her whole body curling protectively. "He's here. He needs me. If I let go, he'll be gone forever." The sob returned, harsher now, scraping from her throat like rusted metal. I saw it then. The threads of sterile light woven around her arms, her shoulders, her bowed head. They pulsed with her grief, drawing it out, amplifying it, feeding it back into her like venom through veins. The inhibitor had turned her love into a loop, her loss into an engine. I felt my chest cave in. This was me. This was my story retold in different flesh. I reached out, desperate. "Listen to me. I know what this is. I've been where you are. You think you're holding on out of love, but it's not love. It's chains. If you let go," she screamed, a sound so piercing it split the silence of the corridor. "If I let go, he will die. Don't you understand? He's all I have left." Her body rocked violently, clutching at nothing, her sobs turning into wails. The sterile light brightened, feeding on her despair, weaving tighter around her arms. I grabbed her wrists. For a moment, I felt them solid beneath my hands. Bones, tendons, flesh. "Please," I begged, tears stinging my eyes. "You don't have to live in this. You can choose to let go." Her gaze met mine, wild and broken. "And what do I have if I let go?" "Nothing. I would rather be chained to him than free without him." Her form flickered. The warmth beneath my hands turned to shadow, slipping through my fingers. She pulled back into her cycle, arms curling once more around the emptiness. rocking it, whispering lullabies that dissolved into sobs. I collapsed beside her, helpless. My shadow stretched beneath me, clear and steady now, but it offered no bridge to her. I could see the prison, I could name it, but I could not free her from it. The watcher's voice stirred in me again, quiet as breath. Compassion binds you to her. Control would try to break her chains. But agency must be chosen, not given. I pressed my palms to my eyes, shaking. Then what am I supposed to do? Just watch her suffer. You may witness. You may grieve with her. But the choice is hers. Always hers. I looked back at the woman. She clutched her invisible child, whispering words that tore my heart in two. I wanted to tear the light threads away, to scream at the inhibitor, to shatter the machinery that fed on her pain. But I remembered my own visions, how no one could have dragged me from betrayal or attachment until I chose to honor my own soul. It was the same here. I reached out once more, not to break her chains, but to touch her shoulder. My hand passed through like mist, but I whispered anyway. You are more than your grief. When you are ready, you will see it. Until then, I will remember you. Her rocking slowed for a heartbeat. Her eyes flicked to mine, hollow but searching. And for an instant I thought she might see. But then the sobs returned, harder, deeper. The light flared. The cycle continued. I stood, shaking, torn between fury and sorrow. The corridor stretched on before me, endless silhouettes locked in endless loops. Betrayal, rage, greed, despair. Each one a mirror, each one a soul feeding the inhibitor system. I clenched my fists. Then this is what it does, I whispered. It doesn't break us with force. It lets us break ourselves, and calls it love. The watcher stood at my side, silent once more. The shadow overlapped mine, steady and patient. I turned to it, voice trembling. I want to save them all. The silence answered. You cannot save. You can only witness and choose. I closed my eyes. Compassion burned in me, hot and raw, but beneath it a steadier truth rose. I could not free anyone else by force. Agency was a gift each soul had to claim for itself. If I tried to drag them into freedom, I would only bind them with new chains. I opened my eyes again. The woman still rocked her empty bundle, whispering lullabies that no child would ever hear. I bowed my head. Then I honor her even here. I honor her soul, even if she cannot. The words steadied me. My shadow did not waver. I turned and walked on, my heart torn but my steps clear. Behind me, the sobbing faded into distance. Ahead, the corridor widened, shadows stretching into shapes I could not yet name. I understood now. Compassion was not control. To honor another soul was to allow them their choice, even if that choice was sorrow. And so I walked, carrying her grief like a mirror, knowing it was not mine to break.
Chapter 7. The Machinery Revealed.
The corridor widened. At first I thought it was only distance, the silhouettes thinning as I walked, the path stretching further into shadow. But then the air itself began to hum, low and steady, like the vibration of a vast engine buried deep beneath the floor. The watcher kept pace with me, silent as always, but I felt its presence sharpen. It wasn't guiding me. It was allowing me to see. And then the walls dissolved. I staggered, blinking against the sudden glare. The corridor fell away, replaced by an expanse so vast I couldn't name its shape. It wasn't a hall or chamber, not sky or sea. It was something other. A lattice of light stretching into infinity, woven from strands so thin they looked like spider silk. Each strand pulsed faintly, carrying not light exactly, but memory, emotion, story. I drew closer, and the strands thickened into cables. Each one thrummed with a rhythm I could feel in my bones. When I touched one, visions spilled out. A mother weeping at a grave, a soldier clutching a dying brother, a child crying as parents fought in the next room. The cable was full of them, looping, repeating, magnified until the grief was louder than the love that had once surrounded it. I pulled my hand back, heart hammering. The lattice shifted, drawing me deeper. The strands converged into vast engines, wheels turning slowly, their surfaces carved with images of human lives. I saw scenes engraved into their faces, moving like film reels. Betrayal, envy, desperation, pride. Each will turned in time with the others, locking together in a rhythm that devoured everything poured into it. And I realized with horror and awe, this was the inhibitor, not a figure, not a tyrant, a system. It was not malicious. There was no sneer in the hum, no hatred in the motion. The wheels did not mock the souls trapped within them. They simply turned, indifferent, efficient, precise. It harvested fixation the way a millstone grinds grain, not because it wants to, but because that is what it was built to do. A forge, not a demon. The watcher lifted its hand. The lattice brightened, and I saw more clearly. Threads of sterile light reaching back into the corridor, tethering each soul I had passed. Their grief, their rage, their obsessions all fed into the engines. The stories were woven together, braided into cords that kept the system alive. I saw how it worked. A woman's sorrow for her child twisted into despair, looped endlessly, feeding the lattice. A man's hunger for justice bent into rage, replayed until it was all he knew. A lover's longing warped into possession, magnified until it smothered the very love it clung to. Every wound became fuel. Every story became a tether. I pressed my hands to my head. It's not hell. It's not punishment. It's... My voice cracked. It's a machine. The watcher tilted its head, shadow steady across mine. But why? I demanded. Why would anything be built to feed on this? Why forge sorrow into chains? The silence pressed back, patient as ever. And in that silence, understanding stirred. The forge does not hate the ore. It refines it. The hammer does not despise the iron. It shapes it. The inhibitor was not here to destroy us. It was here to test us, to push against us, to reveal whether we would honor our souls or honor our wounds. It was mechanical, yes, but its indifference was worse than cruelty. There was no enemy to fight, no tyrant to overthrow. Only a system that responded to whatever I gave it. If I fed it grief, it magnified grief. If I fed it love bound by control, it forged chains. It could not be bribed, tricked, or cursed. Could only be seen. I looked again at the lattice. For the first time, I noticed strands that had gone dim, cords that no longer pulsed with memory. They dangled loose, frayed, as though the engine had lost its grip on them. Souls that had chosen. Souls that had honored themselves enough to step free. My chest tightened. This was the only way out, not to fight the machine, but to stop feeding it. The lattice trembled. A new vision flared before me. A young man locked in battle, fists swinging at a shadow that never fell. His rage poured into the cables, fueling them, keeping him chained to an enemy that did not exist. I reached out instinctively, wanting to shout, to shake him free. But the watcher's silence pressed harder. I remembered the grieving mother. Agency cannot be forced. The young man's rage was his prison, and until he saw it for himself, no one could open the lock. I stepped back, trembling. Then all of us, all humanity, were feeding this system every moment of our lives. The watcher's silence was answer enough. I saw it then, not just individuals but nations woven into the lattice. Wars fueled by vengeance, looping endlessly. Empires, driven by pride, rising and falling, their stories threaded into the great wheels. Even entire religions, once vibrant with light, now calcified into control, their truths strangled by obsession and fear. Every pattern, every cycle, every sorrow harvested. And yet, beneath the weight of it, I felt no despair, only clarity. The machine was not evil. It was not good. Simply was. And if it could be fed, it could also be starved. I turned to the watcher, voice steady for the first time. I see now. The chains are not the engine's doing. They are ours. It only uses what we give it. If I honor my wounds, I am fuel. If I honor my soul, I am free. The watcher inclined its head. And in that moment, I understood why it had never spoken more than whispers, why it had never dragged me from my cycles. To save me by force would have been to chain me again. My freedom had to be my choice. I looked out at the vast engines, the endless lattice of human sorrow, the chords that shimmered with grief and rage. I whispered, not in defiance but in clarity, I will not feed you anymore. My shadow stretched steady beneath me. The hum of the machinery faltered for a breath, a hitch in the perfect rhythm. It resumed, of course, it always would. But I had seen the truth. The machine was not my master. It was my forge.
Chapter 8. The Watcher Speaks.
The engines faded behind me. Their hum still echoed in my bones. But as I walked on, the lattice of light dissolved into silence once more. The corridor returned. Faint silhouettes locked in their endless loops, but I saw them differently now. Not as strangers, not as punishments, as fragments of the same truth. Every soul caught in its own tether, feeding the machine. And at the center of it all, waiting for me, was the watcher. It had always been there, silent, patient, a shadow that never left. Sometimes near, sometimes distant, but constant as my grief. Now it stood directly in my path, motionless, faceless. I stopped before it. My shadow stretched clear across the floor. I had shouted at it, cursed it, begged it, but never once had it spoken. I thought perhaps it couldn't, or wouldn't. This time it did. You are seen. The voice was not thunder. It was not command. It was soft, almost gentle, but it carried with it a weight that pressed into my chest like gravity itself. I froze, my throat tight. The watcher tilted its head. But can you see? The words echoed inside me. More question than statement. More challenge than comfort. I thought of all I had witnessed. My wife's betrayal, my son's absence, the grieving mother and her endless sob, the lattice of sorrow feeding the machine. I see sorrow, I whispered. I see pain. I see the chains we bind ourselves with. The watcher's silence pressed in again, and I knew it was not enough. I tried again, voice trembling. I see that this place is not hell, not punishment. It is a forge. The inhibitor does not hate us. It only reflects us. The watcher inclined its head slightly, and the weight of its silence lifted. Not gone, but eased, like a teacher nodding at a student's first correct step. I staggered closer, desperate. Why didn't you tell me sooner? Why let me suffer, blind and chained, when you could have spoken? The watcher did not move. Its voice came again, the same quiet tone, but sharp as a blade. Would you have heard? I flinched. My mouth opened, then closed. Memory flooded back, how I had clung to my son, to my wife, to the illusion of being wronged. If the watcher had spoken then, I would have cursed it. I would have demanded release on my own terms, demanded reunion or revenge. I would not have listened. No, I admitted. I would not have. The watcher stepped forward, its shadow overlapping mine. For the first time, I felt its presence not as distance, but as nearness, like standing beside a mountain or beneath a storm. We do not bind, it said. We do not break. We witness. I swallowed. Witness what? Choice. The word struck like iron. The watcher's silence deepened, but its meaning poured into me. They were not jailers, not executioners, not saviors. They were witnesses. They watched to see what we chose, whether we fed the machine or stepped free of it, whether we honored our souls or our wounds. Their neutrality was not cruelty. It was necessity. If they interfered, they would rob us of agency. If they saved us by force, they would prove the machine right, that we were nothing more than objects to be controlled. They were not here to rescue. They were here to see if we would rescue ourselves. I sank to my knees. Then all this time, I cursed you for silence. But you were never my jailer. The watcher remained still. You were my witness. The words burned, humbling and liberating all at once. I had raged against it, begged it for mercy, accused it of cruelty, when all along it had been standing patient, waiting to see what I would choose. I lifted my face. But why? Why must it be this way? Why leave us in the machine at all? Why not spare us the suffering? The watcher's reply came slower this time, each word heavy. Would love be love without freedom? Would choice be choice without cost? My throat tightened. I thought of my son again, of how fiercely I had wanted him to stay mine. If he had been bound to me, was that love? Or was it only possession? The watcher's words sank deep. Freedom demanded the possibility of chains. Agency demanded the possibility of sorrow. Without it, nothing was real. I pressed my palms to the floor. Then you are not here to save us. You are here to see us. The watcher's silence confirmed it. And if we never choose? I whispered. If we cling forever? The watcher tilted its head, and for a heartbeat I thought I saw something flicker in its form. Not pity, not anger, but patience that stretched beyond time itself. Then you remain, until you choose. The weight of it pressed down on me. I looked back at the corridor, the endless silhouettes locked in loops. They had not been abandoned. They had not been punished. They were simply waiting. For years, decades, centuries perhaps, locked until they chose differently. The machine would grind on. The watchers would witness. And only the soul itself could decide to honor its shadow. I stood slowly, my shadow steady at my feet. I cursed you for silence, I said. But I see now. It was never silence. It was witness. It was waiting. The watcher inclined its head again, and the lattice flared in the distance, glowing brighter as though my understanding had sharpened my vision. I took a step closer to it. Then tell me, what do you see in me now? For the first time, I thought I heard warmth in its voice. A soul learning to see. The words settled deep in me, not as praise, but as truth. I was not finished. I was not free of sorrow, but I was no longer blind. And perhaps that was the beginning of freedom.
Chapter 9. The Cosmic Perspective.
The watcher lifted its hand. The corridor dissolved, the silhouettes of trapped souls flickering out like candles snuffed by a sudden wind. The hum of the machinery dimmed, though I felt it still, like a pulse hidden beneath the skin of the universe. Then the walls fell away. I staggered forward, and the ground itself seemed to vanish. I was suspended in a vast expanse, my shadow steady beneath me, though there was no floor to cast it on. Before me stretched not lattice, not corridor, but a sphere radiant, turning slowly in the dark. Earth. It was more than I remembered. Not just oceans and mountains, not just clouds swirling above continents. The planet shimmered with threads of light and shadow, a web that wrapped around it like a second skin. From a distance it looked like veins, pulsing faintly, carrying currents of memory, fear, love, hunger. The watcher's voice whispered, "Behold the crucible." I drifted closer, and the web resolved into images. Each thread was a story, each knot a cycle. I saw cities rising and falling, their towers gleaming for a season before crumbling into ruin. I saw empires swelling with pride, devouring neighbors, then collapsing beneath their own weight. I saw nations locked in endless wars, each side convinced of its righteousness, each convinced the other was the enemy, both feeding the same engine of violence. The strands of sterile light pulsed brighter around them, weaving their hatred into cords that fed the machinery I had already glimpsed. I turned, heart pounding. "It's the same," I whispered. "The same as the souls in the corridor. The same as me." The watcher's silence affirmed it. I saw religions bloom like flowers, radiant with hope at first, prophets crying for love, for compassion, for freedom. Their words glowed like fire, burning clean and true. But then the light dimmed. Their followers clung to form instead of spirit, to ritual instead of truth. Institutions hardened, rules calcified, and what began as love bent into control. The sterile threads coiled around them, amplifying zeal into fanaticism, turning devotion into chains. Wars flared in the name of the very truths meant to free them. I wept. Even our faith becomes fuel. The vision shifted. I saw families, husbands and wives repeating cycles of betrayal, of silence, of bitterness. Parents clinging to children until love soured into control. Children growing up in the shadows of wounds they never chose, carrying them forward into new chains. Every personal sorrow was a seed. Every seed, when multiplied, became culture, nation, empire. And every one of them fed the same machine. I pressed my hands to my head. It's all the same pattern, scaled, multiplied. My grief, her grief, our wars, our gods. All mirrors of the same test. The watcher's voice stirred again. You are not alone. Never were. The wound of one is the wound of all. I drifted closer still until the web filled my vision. I saw the present. Humanity in my own time. Cities glowing with electric light. Towers piercing the clouds. I saw men and women tethered to their devices. Their stories magnified, repeated, distorted. Joy was drowned in comparison. Truth buried under endless noise. The machine pulsed brighter than ever. The inhibitor's forge humming with the fuel of billions. And yet I saw sparks, small, flickering lights in the darkness. Individuals breaking chains, honoring their souls even in the midst of the web. Their threads dimmed, slipped loose, fell free. The web did not collapse, but it faltered, shifted, as though each act of freedom weakened its grip. My chest ached. So this is the test. Not mine alone, not hers, everyone's, every soul, every culture, every age. The watcher inclined its head. I saw further back, history replayed in vast arcs. Rome rising and falling, its legions marching beneath banners of order, its people fed illusions of bread and games. The sterile threads glowed bright around its collapse. I saw the Middle Ages, faith twisted into fear, knowledge hoarded, wars waged in the name of salvation. I saw revolutions, ideals born of freedom that hardened into tyrannies of their own. Every age repeated the pattern. Betrayal, attachment, control, despair. The machine fed. I turned to the watcher, anger breaking through my awe. But why? Why would the divine allow this? Why build a world that feeds the inhibitor? Why let us suffer endlessly? The watcher's voice was calm, steady as stone. The forge shapes. It does not decide the shape. The hammer falls. But it is the iron that must choose what it will become. I swallowed hard. So, the inhibitor is not our enemy? No more than fire is the enemy of gold. The truth seared me. The inhibitor was not here to destroy us, but to test us, to reveal what we truly valued. If we clung to wounds, it forged chains. If we honored our souls, it broke them. The choice had always been ours. I looked again at the earth, radiant and wounded all at once. The web shimmered around it, glowing with both sorrow and light. For the first time, I saw it not as a prison, but as an incubator, a crucible of choice. We were not victims of a cruel fate. We were participants in a test older than memory. Tears filled my eyes. I thought my story mattered most. I thought my pain was unique. But it was only one note in a chorus that has been singing since the beginning. The watcher's voice came again, softer now, almost tender. And what you choose echoes. In you all are seen. I understood then. My betrayal, my grief, my release, they were not isolated. They were part of the great pattern. If I honored my soul, it was not only for me, but for every soul caught in the same web. Personal wounds were never just personal. They were threads in the tapestry of humanity. And every act of freedom weakened the lattice that bound us all. I looked up at the earth once more, radiant in its web. For the first time since my death, I did not despair. Yes, I whispered, I see.
Chapter 10, The Way Forward.
The vision of earth faded. The web of sorrow, the lattice of cycles, the hum of the inhibitor's engines dissolved into silence. I stood once more in the corridor, though it no longer felt the same. The silhouettes still lingered, bound in their loops, but I did not see them as prisoners now. I saw them as I had seen myself, souls waiting to choose. And I knew then, my path was no longer to rage against the machine, nor to rescue those who could not yet see. My path was to step forward. The watcher remained before me, silent, steady. Its faceless gaze met mine, though no eyes could be seen. I took a breath. Not air, but something deeper, something of the soul. I understand, I said. Not everything. Not the whole mystery, but enough. I am not finished, but I am ready. The watcher inclined its head. The corridor stretched on into the distance, but I felt the shift beneath my feet. The path narrowed, curving toward a gate of light and shadow that pulsed like a living heart. It was not open, nor closed. It was movement itself, a current flowing, beckoning. I knew what it was before I asked. Reincarnation, not reward, not punishment. Continuation, another chance to live, to choose, to honor my soul in flesh once more. I turned back one last time. The corridor seemed endless. Countless souls locked in their grief, their rage, their illusions. The woman with her invisible child. The youth with his fists raised. The husband and wife locked forever in accusation. A part of me wanted to run back, to scream at them until they heard, to tear the threads away with my bare hands. But I remembered the watcher's words. Agency cannot be forced. I bowed my head. I honor you, I whispered. Even here, even in chains. I honor your souls. Their forms did not stir. But my shadow remained steady, and I felt the weight of the moment settle into me like a vow. The watcher's voice came once more. You are seen. It was softer this time, less a challenge, more a benediction. And now, it whispered, you will see. I turned toward the gate. The current surged, light and shadow twisting together into a river that led beyond sight. Pulsed with possibility, with risk, with freedom. I felt fear rise in me. Fear of pain, of betrayal, of sorrow returned. What if I lived again only to fall into the same chains? What if my son remained lost to me, lifetime after lifetime? The current beckoned still, and I realized The fear was part of it. To choose life again without certainty, that was the proof of agency. I stepped forward. Each pace was heavier than the last, as though the current tested me, asked me to hesitate, to cling one final time. But my shadow stretched steady beneath me, a reminder of the truth I had claimed. I was more than my wounds. The gate flared. My form shimmered, breaking at the edges. I felt myself dissolving into the flow, drawn toward birth, toward flesh, toward another life I could not yet imagine. I turned once more to the watcher. It stood still, patient as ever, its silence wrapped around me like a mantle. I lifted my voice, clear and steady. To honor my soul is to honor all souls. The chain is broken. The way is open. The watcher inclined its head, and then it vanished as though it had never been. The current surged. I felt myself swept into motion, not upward, not downward, but forward. Through light and shadow, through memory and forgetting. The corridor dissolved. The machinery faded. The web of earth receded into distance. I was no longer bound by betrayal, no longer chained by attachment. I was carried by something deeper, the choice to continue, to honor, to live again. I do not know where I will go. I do not know whose child I will be, or what trials await me. I do not know if I will meet my son again, or if my wife's face will return to me in some other form. But I know this. I will not enter as a prisoner. I will enter as a soul. The current widened, bright and endless. My shadow dissolved into light, and I whispered one last time to the watcher, to the souls, to the earth, to myself. The way is open. And beyond the current, faint but steady, was a horizon I could not yet cross. A place where the forge was no longer needed. I was not there, not yet. But knowing it existed was enough. Jonah.
I'll walk the corridor of shadows, chained by the sorrow I bore. But a voice in the silence whispered, "You are seen, can you see once more?" The forge is fire, the fire is choice. I found my soul, I found my voice. The chain is broken, the way is shown. To honor all souls, I honor my own. I honor my own. I walk the corridor of shadows, chained by the sorrow I bore. But a voice in the silence whispered, "You are seen, can you see once more?" The forge is fire, the fire is choice. I found my soul, I found my voice. The chain is broken, the way is shown. To honor all souls, I honor my own. I honor to all